Myers, he said this, even if the Warriors had PG and Klay, he has some reservations about that.
So you add Paul George to the Warriors, and you say, okay, that's a really good team. You almost need Klay Thompson as well. I mean, the West, with what Oklahoma City is doing, what Minnesota is doing, with Ant-Man, with SGA, all these guys, what Dallas just did, I do think we're sometimes missing things and trying to oversimplify. Oh, you add Paul George, you add Klay Thompson. It's still not enough, guys. You need to build a team to compete with what is a loaded West. And even getting through the West, now the Eastern Conference showed they had the best team in the NBA. It wasn't that close, really. It was a 4-1 series against Dallas. But the thing that's different about the West is the depth of the West. You could be a very good team in the West and be the 9th seed. We talked just about Houston recently. Houston's trying to make the playoffs. The West goes, we talked about Phoenix. We talk about the Clippers still wanting to be good. We talk about the Lakers. We're still with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. It's a deep conference. So just getting through it all, you need depth. And Klay and PG may give you a better shot. But at the same time, I don't think either of them just solves all the issues for any team.
So that's Bob Myers. So if you don't have Klay Thompson and you just have Paul George, what does it look like around him?
I think he's too loyal to Klay in general. Just on air, on television, I just the sense that I've gotten. And I understand that. He's got a relationship with him that, I mean, how could we even begin to understand what their relationship is? And I would feel the same way if I was Bob Myers. I am not mad at him for his point of view. I just differ in how I'm viewing things. I think Paul George is just a great upgrade for the Warriors roster. You know, moving Klay to the side, of course they need to do more. Like everyone agrees they need to do more, and the guys that are currently on their roster need to play better. Like there's a variety of things that they need to do, but it is a start, and they need to start somewhere.
Whose roster would you say was better over the last 2 years, the Clippers or the Warriors roster?
I mean, the Clippers roster is always hurt too.
But on paper, if they're healthy,
on paper, sure, the Clippers roster. Right? But I also think that like the game is not played on paper, and part of the James Harden experience is all of the stuff. Right? Like all of the stuff that goes along into the James Harden experience. Part of the Kawhi experience is the enigma of the stuff, that whether he's available and not available. And like as we're talking about Klay Thompson, and I know you keep saying like people saying he had a bad year. And well, yeah, the raw data, just the shooting, but there's other stuff that gets baked into it. You know what I mean? Like I keep telling you that whatever sport it is, like there is a team chemistry component or an attitude component for a coaching staff and organization. Like as a person that you're dealing with, and I use Harden as a great example of this, like all the stuff that you have to put up with dealing with that individual sometimes overweighs the impact on the floor.
So, but you agree that with all that said, their roster was better.
A little bit better.
2 years. Yeah, a little bit better. Top heavy.
I mean, but I didn't think the roster was like otherworldly.
Right. But the Clippers paid a lot of money for that roster. And this year they tried to stack the roster. And they got bounced in the first round back-to-back years. Now, I know injuries are baked into that. But that's the problem. These guys don't even make it to the playoffs. And when they make it to the playoffs, they're beat up. Paul George's been beat up. And he played 74 games in a contract year because he knew that bag was coming. And he knew he had to play well. That kind of scares me. If I sign Paul George and go try to trade for Paul George and give him a max deal.
But you can't
scares me. It scares me. You're worried about Kuminga and you're worried about that. I can be worried about Paul George. You know what I'm saying?
Paul George has been excellent for like 13 years.
He's been excellent, but he's been hurt. He's been hurt. He's been hurt, and he's 34 years old. Like, that's the truth of the matter. So, I don't know how much better the Warriors are with just Paul George. I don't know how much better they are with a middling 30. Like, I just don't know.
Well, here's what I would say. They need to be better than the 10 seed. And I think that adding Paul George makes them a better basketball team.
They're an 8 seed?
What?
They're an 8 seed?
Well,
are they, how about this?
They were only a couple of games away from being the 6 seed.
With Paul George, are they a top 6 seed?
I think that they're right on the fringe of that.
Because if you want to use that theory, then I'm going to use my theory that, hey, Draymond Green doesn't get suspended, the Warriors are a top 5 team in the West. And then we're maybe having a different conversation. You know, like, if we're going to use that, let's say if we say that, I'm not coming down your road on anything like. But let's say that if you're a couple games away from a 6 seed, and Fitz comes on here and says, "Well, you know what? Draymond plays are a 53-win team, and they're top 5 in the West, and who knows what happens in the playoffs?" Then hell, if they're bringing in Paul George, and that could be close to a championship run. Then, if that's the case,
I think that's a few lanes too far for me, but I see where you're going.
You get what
with
I'm saying? But,
I see where you're going.
Here's my deal with Paul George. That's it. Ever since he got to the Clippers, 48 games played, 54, 31, 56, and then 74. He went 5 straight seasons, or 4 straight seasons, in which he didn't play more than 56 games, not including the playoffs. That concerns me.
It should.
That concerns me big time.
No question.
That's huge risk.
Of course.
You go to you give him a max deal, and Paul George plays 56, 60 games.
But as you're surveying the landscape right now, like, B, you also have to acknowledge, like, there's not a lot of other great options.
No, I hear that.
And so if you're the Warriors, and this is kind of how I've done the math, it's like, okay, our options are we do nothing, which that sure doesn't seem like it's going to happen, or we do something. And of the somethings, Paul George feels like it costs, the least compared to and most reasonable, considering you're not getting Giannis and you're not getting Anthony Edwards or someone like that. So I'm picking a bunch of not a lot of great options. I think he's the best option that is presently available, and I think it makes you better. And I think that's a start. And then from there, we can continue to build this thing out.
How much better, though, does Paul George make this team? How much better does Paul George make this team? Do you want to sink? I mean, boy, I got to see what the deal looks like. And I got to see what the roster looks like. Paul George is a great piece if you have the right roster around him. And Steph Curry's a lot different than Kawhi. He's a lot different than James Harden. The system's a lot different. I get all that. But boy, what does it cost? How much money are you paying? And how much can you fill out the roster if you do bring in Paul George on a max deal? And where does Kuminga play with that? If we're going to be worried about extending Kuminga, and he's only 21 years old. He's only 21, all right, with a ton of upside. We all can agree he's got a ton of upside, untapped potential. And then you say, you know what, we're going to involve him in the deal, or we're going to decide not to extend him, risk him becoming a restricted free agent, and then you got Paul George on the books for a lot of money who's going to be 35 in August. That, to me, is a lot more concerning.
I think if he doesn't get traded, he's getting extended. Like, they know what's going on. I think the Kuminga thing is pretty straightforward. Either he's dealt and they didn't want to pay him, or he's the deal breaker of a trade package, or they're keeping him and extending him. I don't think there's any in between. I have a hard time thinking that they're going to allow the season to play out and risk losing him in a restricted free agency situation where their finances would be up against it.
And then there's the other factor here. Where's Steve Kerr and Jonathan Kuminga at?
I hadn't even quantified that. I have no idea.
What would Steve Kerr prefer on this roster? That's an interesting question to me. What do you think he does?
Like, so what?
Will his style of play? I think Steve Kerr's a veteran type of, he likes the youngsters.
Yeah.
But in today's NBA, they don't practice much.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of developing in season. Mm-hmm. Now you have your player development coaches, and they can help you on the side, but you also got to win basketball games. And Slater touched on that yesterday with the whole Ty Jerome and Anthony Lamb thing, which drove us all crazy. Yeah. But I get it. We're trying to make the playoffs. So we got to do what we got to do on a game-by-game basis to try to make the playoffs. This ain't a training ground to try to get your game right and sacrifice games and not make the playoffs, especially with the salary cap and his tax bill.
I hear that. And what I would say to the coach is that there are things that the guy can do that you need to highlight and you need to accentuate. Like the essence of coaching is adjusting your philosophy based off the roster. You can't just force ball movement on everyone when your team doesn't have the athleticism that they used to, nor the passing IQ. Like that worked when you have Livingston and Iggy and pass-first guys and Draymond, and both the Splash Brothers could run 17 miles in a game. Like it doesn't work as much when you have, again, more pick and roll type players and you have less ball IQ guys who aren't willing passers. Like it made a lot of sense when you had Bogut. It made a lot of sense when you had a guy like Zaza who could set off ball screens and be rugged. Like I don't know that makes a lot of sense with, Dario Saric, for example.
But here's my thing though. How does Steph Curry want to play? How does Draymond Green want to play? How does the veterans of the team want to play?
I mean, Steph's evolved his style.
Yeah, a little bit, but you go back to in time, they didn't want to change their ways on how they played. They won a lot of games playing their style of basketball.
But they haven't the last 2 years. So I think now is where the dam is breaking.
They're in real time, though. Now, they're talking about evolving now.
Of course.
But in real time, coming off a championship season,
I get that.
We're saying, you know what? We haven't lost a series in the Western Conference yet. Why the hell would we change our style for these kids who are unproven?
I get
that. I understand that because remember, this is a players' league. It's a players' league. So
I think the players would be foolish to not acknowledge that they're not slipping because that's too harsh, but like they're depreciating slightly and their style of play has been caught up by the rest of the league and everyone else is playing a different way. And if you're not evolving, you're dying. Like the adapt or die. That's how it works. And I think that these guys I think Steph and Draymond and even Steve Kerr, they're pretty high IQ basketball guys. I think that they're understanding they could still run a lot of the same elements while incorporating some new ones and fixing their style. And that's why, more than anything, to your point about style of play and the young guys, that's why I think Paul George fits really well. I think he actually fits the old school style of play that they've wanted to play for a long time. And I also believe that he brings multiple elements to the table. Ball handler, facilitator, a little bit of length and size. I think he can knock down shots out as a catch and shoot guy.
I think this entire week, Shasky, I think this entire week, I understand. He does fit. That's not my issue with Paul George. He does fit. And I made a mistake. He doesn't turn 35 in August. He just turned 34 May 2nd, so my apologies. He does fit. I don't question the fit. But I do question the age, the money you're going to have to pay him, and the roster you're going to have around him. And when I look at the Western Conference, like you bring in Paul George, how closer are you to the Minnesota? How closer are you to Oklahoma City? How closer are you to Dallas?
Well, you got to worry about your roster.
I mean, you do got to worry about your – but just watch Paul George as a 1 or 2 option, whether James Harden did James Harden or – he was a 1 or 2 option, 1A or 1B. And they got smoked in 6.
I know, but
he had 3.
You can't hit a 5-run grand slam. No, when you're down 6. Like right now, the analogy is they're down 6. They have to hit a single. And right now, you just got I would view Paul George as a double, right? Like, boom, we're a little bit better.
Not with the money he's going to want.
Well, but that's not
You're paying him grand slam money.
Well, I don't know about that. I think
the max deal, 4 years for a 34-year-old with damn near $200 million. That's a grand slam deal.
Well, last year you had a guy making the same exact amount of money who's not as good as him. So this is an upgrade, right, in terms of value for your dollar and bang for your buck. So I'm trying to take little victories all over the roster, and I can't worry about how close this closes. It closes the gap, but it doesn't get you all the way.
Yeah, see,
it gets you closer, I guess.
That's when you give him a max deal and you're giving him that much money, I'm expecting a grand slam return. You know what I'm saying? And so when I look at the landscape of the Western Conference, like Bob Myers is saying, and look, I love my Warriors. I do think they'll be better with Paul George if they have him, and what the roster looks like around him, we'll see. But Paul George is a good player, very good player. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. It's been excellent for the. I never got the Paul George hate, and I'll say that right off the rip. I never got the hate that he received over the years, like, oh, PG, that's PG that. But when I look at the landscape of the Western Conference, and I'm trying to be realistic, and I'm saying, boy, San Antonio's coming with Wemby. They're coming. Houston's trying to make moves left and right. Utah's trying to get better. Phoenix is still lingering around. You went 1-3 against Phoenix. Are you better than Phoenix with Paul George right now? I don't know. But Dallas, Denver, Minnesota, I don't even know if you cracked the top 6 with Paul George.
Okay,
and if you trade for him and give him a max deal, well, the alternative, and nobody wants to hear it, and nobody's going to want to go through it. I don't want to go through it. The alternative is not running it back, but trying to reset your books, bring in moderate assets, and try to get and reload for the next year. Now, there's a risk there, right? Because Curry's going to be older, Draymond's going to be older, but that draft's going to be loaded in 2025.
Well, the cap's going up.
And the cap is going to go up.
The cap is going up.
And the cap is going to go up.
I mean,
that's one alternative.
NBC deal.
That's one alternative right there. But Joe Lacob doesn't want to take a step back, but he has hinted that, hey, I need to get under the tax. But if a deal's out there, I'll make that deal and stay in the tax if I know we're going to win. All I'm saying is I don't know if Paul George guarantees the Warriors being out of the play-in tournament.
If it costs you Wiggins and CP3 and some other, part that isn't Kuminga, to me, this is like a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, and I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that whatsoever. I don't disagree with that. But I'm also not in the business of just trading just to trade. We can't confuse activity. Hey, man, they're being active.
Paul George is a move.
He's a move, but I don't know how you get better. You get what I'm saying? Like the Giants signed Matt Chapman. The Giants signed Harris-Hilaire. They signed Blake Snell.
Matt Chapman's been an upgrade.
He's been an upgrade. How much better are the Giants right now?
Well, that's not how you're judging the entire team versus like individual acquisitions. Like individual acquisitions, they got rid of J.D. Davis and they brought in Chapman. That's been a win. Like, that's how I'm trying to construct my rosters. Little wins across the board.
That's not just the signing they had, though. They had Matt Chapman. That's one move.
Yeah, and the Soler one didn't work out as well as we wanted to. The Snell one hasn't worked out. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Like, Nick Ahmed hasn't worked out.
But on that individual basis, like, I'm looking at just the Paul George move right now. And, like, that doesn't deter me from making moves. Like, is Paul George for Wiggins and Chris Paul, is that an upgrade?
Let me ask this, though. Does Paul George make this team better if Kuminga's part of that trade?
See, that's where I think it gets complicated. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. But I'm not sure if Kuminga has to be a part of it. You know,
I would hope so. I would hope I would be very skeptical of trading Kuminga, especially for Paul George, who is 34.
I just think that to be fearful at this point, given where they're at, where the sand is coming out of the hourglass, I think trying to pick holes in a slight upgrade for a guy that wants to come play and Curry wants to play with him, I think we don't know that. Like,
we're assuming that.
On that.
I mean, we're kind of assuming that he wants to play with them. I think he would want to play with them.
Feel that way.
We would. I mean, I don't even know what tea leaves are.
And my counter to everyone would be like, hey, look, like, give me the other trade that's viable, that's out there. Like Brandon Ingram, okay. Like I think I'd rather have Paul George. You know, like give me the other viable option out there. That's what I keep asking everyone. And if you want to say, hey, just stand pat, I don't think they're gonna stand pat. I don't think that's an acceptable option. For Steph.
Nobody's saying that, Shasky. I think we're in agreement on a lot of things here. What's just funny? I don't know why we're arguing. We're in agreement on a lot of things. They can't stand pat. They can't run it back. They are big game hunting. They're doing all those things. But I'm just looking at the player of Paul George, and I'm trying to think to myself, damn, how does he make the Warriors better? Okay, he's a better player, but as a team, do you get better in the Western Conference when I'm looking at the other teams? Because I got to say, all right, I'll bring in Paul George. Now where's my compete level against other teams? Is Steph Curry going to play 70 games next year?
All right, so let's lay this out. You play Dallas in the first round. But you got to go matchups, right? Let's say you play Dallas in the first round. Well, now I do have a perimeter defender that can guard either Kyrie or Luka at times.
Have you watched Paul George try to guard Luka Doncic?
Everyone's had trouble. Everyone's had trouble doing it.
Then you have Kyrie. Who's going to guard Kyrie on this team?
Well, we'll find out. I mean, we will see. If they keep Kuminga, it might end up being Kuminga. If they keep GP2, it might be GP2 for times. But I'm just, you have to lay this thing out. Like currently, they had Klay at the 2. He couldn't guard either of those guys, and I'm not crushing
him. That wasn't what killed them.
Chris Paul couldn't guard any of those guys.
Luka missed one of those games. You know what killed the Warriors in those games against Dallas?
Wiggins missed the game down the stretch, and he didn't guard those guys.
Lively, Gafford dominated the Warriors.
No doubt, but it starts with stopping the ball.
And I just watched Paul George try to guard Luka over and over in these playoffs.
Luka had a great run to the playoffs. You know, like you're asking me, and I'm saying, like,
all right, that's fine. I'm just countering. That's all. We don't have to get mad or anything. I don't know why we're getting all.
No one's getting mad. You're saying, why does it make you like better? Does it make you good? I don't think a front office sits there and goes, all right. If we do this move, is it good enough to make us better in the West? I think it's very simplistic. It's like, hey, Wiggins has been a negative the last 2 years. Chris Paul, we're losing for nothing. Can we upgrade the roster right now on this one move? Yes, we can.
Is GP2 going to last? I love GP2. And you were just telling me, man, GP2 can't stay healthy. You've been so down on GP2. It depends
on who you keep on the roster.
Now we're expecting him to come guard Kyrie 94 feet. Let's go to David. 888-957-9570. See, we got some calls stacked up. Here. Does Paul George make this team better if Kuminga's part of the deal? We're assuming that the Clippers would deal with the Warriors, and we're assuming that Paul George will want to come here to try to win. Is Paul George going to make this team better if JK is part of the deal? 888-957-9570.